You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got some aggressive moves by Jack Smith here in the D.C. trial as things are getting back into motion. Can you explain what he just did?
Brian, we may be one step closer to actually seeing all of the incriminating evidence and information of what Donald Trump did on and around January 6th. This is evidence that was provided by Republican witness after Republican witness to the grand jury. So the witnesses know what Trump did. The grand jury knows what Trump did. Jack Smith and his team know what Trump did, but we are still waiting to get a full accounting of the crimes that Donald Trump committed on and around January 6th to try to steal the presidential election. Well, we just got a court filing, and it's interesting because this is a status report that was filed jointly by the prosecutors and by Donald Trump's criminal defense attorneys at the direction of Judge Chutkan. And it was designed to give both sides an opportunity to tell Judge Chutkan what they propose by way of sort of litigating what of Donald Trump's crimes and conduct might be official acts, what might not be official acts, what might enjoy some immunity, what should not enjoy immunity. The Supreme Court, remember, returned the case to Judge Chutkan to litigate and resolve those precise issues. So this status report should not have been all that blockbuster. But I have to tell you, there is a money line on page 2 of this joint status report because Jack Smith says exactly how he believes they should go about resolving the absolute immunity issue. Let me read it, and then I'm going to translate it from legalese to English. He says the government, the prosecutor, proposes that it file a brief and explain why the conduct of Donald Trump that they laid out in the indictment should not enjoy immunity. And they also say, by the way, there's a lot of unpled evidence that we will put in the brief, and we will litigate whether that unpled evidence constitutes official acts or not. Here's why that's so important. What Jack Smith just said there, by unpled evidence, we've all read the indictment, frankly, indictments plural, because there have been 2 now issued by different grand juries in Washington, D.C. One is 45 pages long. Then the Supreme Court said, well, some of what Donald Trump did constituted official acts for which he will have immunity. Jack Smith said, fine. Went back, presented the evidence to a second grand jury, only evidence of the unofficial acts that should not enjoy immunity. The second grand jury charged Donald Trump with the same 4 felony counts even after Jack Smith pulled out the potentially official acts. But here's the thing. We only know a small fraction of the evidence of Donald Trump's crimes. But what Jack Smith just said, this is a long explanation, but he said, I am going to include all of the information of Donald Trump's criminal conduct. I'm going to put it in this brief. Judge, I am ready to file it promptly as soon as you give me the go-ahead. And only then can the parties, the prosecutors and the defense attorneys, begin to litigate what's an official act, what's an unofficial act. Judge Chutkan needs to know about all of it, not just a small fraction of it that we have all seen pled in the indictments. He said, I'm going to put all the unpled stuff, the unrevealed stuff, the thus far undisclosed stuff. And Brian, now the big ticket question is, when will we see it? Will the American voters get to see it before they go to the polls on November 5th? Or will Judge Chutkan say, you know what, I'm going to set a date off in November, December, or in 2025 for you, Jack Smith, to file this public pleading with the court? That is the open question at the moment.
And when will we get an answer to that question? When will we know what the schedule is going to be?
I think pretty promptly. So the next thing that is on the schedule in the D.C. election subversion case is a September 5th hearing on this joint status report that was just submitted to the court. So I have a feeling Judge Chutkan may say, okay, y'all have made your positions known in this joint status report. I am now prepared to set some dates and deadlines. We could know as early as September 5th. But, you know, Brian, let me round out what is in this 10-page joint status report. The first 2 pages is Jack Smith very succinctly answering the very question Judge Chutkan posed. How should we go about litigating the immunity question? Because that is why the Supreme Court returned the case to Judge Chutkan to litigate the immunity issue. Then the next 7.5 pages of this 10-page joint submission is Donald Trump and his lawyers complaining and moaning and kvetching and saying, don't set any deadlines. In fact, they set out a schedule in the 7.5 pages of complaining, and it's a schedule that would propose to take the court through the spring or fall of 2025, and they don't even get to the immunity question. So basically, the answer to Judge Chutkan's question that she posed jointly to the parties about when and how should we litigate the immunity issue that the Supreme Court just told me to litigate, Trump's answer is never.
Right. Does it undermine their case when they do something so egregiously transparent here? Like, are they basically signaling to Judge Chutkan that they're not even taking this seriously? And does that undermine their ability to actually be taken seriously by Judge Chutkan and be perceived as a good faith actor in this?
Absolutely. It undermines their credibility. And at this moment, there is literally only one proposal from Jack Smith. She asked for proposals from both parties, and Donald Trump's lawyers wouldn't even give her a proposed date or a proposed procedure to tackle the immunity question. Really, the only question she was asked to tackle by the Supreme Court. It undermines their credibility. And frankly, Judge Chutkan can say, listen, I've only got one proposal here from Jack Smith, so I'm going to go ahead and accept it, and that's the way we're going to proceed.
And finally, Glenn, why is this important? Why is this final hearing in terms of immunity going to be so consequential?
For a couple of reasons. It's going to be legally consequential to the case and the future of the prosecution of Donald Trump for trying to steal the 2020 election. And it's also going to be really consequential for the American voters. First of all, legally, why is it consequential? Well, once all of the evidence is sorted through by Judge Chutkan, and she makes her ruling about what are official acts and what are not official acts, that will sort of clear up the landscape with respect to how many of these 4 felony charges presently indicted against Donald Trump can proceed to trial. So that's going to be a really important bellwether moment for this case. Of course, it will still be appealed back to the Supreme Court for further proceedings. But so legally it will be significant. But, practically, for purposes of the American voters, think about this. There's probably a mountain of evidence out there about Donald Trump's crimes that the American voters don't know about. These are crimes committed by somebody who tried to steal the 2020 presidential election and who's looking to retake the reins of governmental power and has told us he'll be a dictator on day one. It feels like an insult to the American people that we are not permitted to know. We are not yet on notice of just how unsuitable Donald Trump is to retake the Oval Office because we don't know all of the evidence that the grand jury and Jack Smith knows about Donald Trump's unsuitability. So I hope, a collateral consequence of Judge Chutkan perhaps accepting the offer of Jack Smith to put all of this stuff in motion so they can move forward on litigating the immunity issue. I hope she accepts it, and I hope to hell that she orders that it be done in the coming weeks so that public document will be available to the American voters before they go to the polls on November 5th.
Okay, well, obviously a lot to look forward to in this D.C. prosecution where we finally have some movement here. So for people watching right now, if you want to stay on top of this stuff, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.